Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Ashley, and this is Shannon. We're both registered psychologists from Creative Sky Psychology, practice in Southwest Calgary. And tonight we'll explore how self-esteem develops and how parents can help support this development at home. So just a little note about our clinic in Calgary. We're specialized psychologists. We work with children, teens, young adults, and their families. It's a space that's been designed with children in mind in order to help children, teens, and their parents feel emotionally safe. We utilize creative play-based methods to help kids explore their feelings and promote change and growth within. We offer sessions in person in Calgary and Alberta-wide online. And just a reminder that today's content is educational, informational, and it's not a substitute for therapy. We are not your therapists. A couple things that we will be exploring today in this workshop. We're going to go over what self-esteem actually is and how it grows at each age and stage. We'll discuss things that are going to get in the way of building confidence and self-esteem in your kids. We'll dive a little bit into social media. It's a big topic, so we'll skim the surface on how social media can influence our teens and their self-esteem. And then there'll be some considerations for our neurodivergent kiddos as well. We'll go over different parent scripts you can use, tools, strategies, things that will help you feel confident in making your children feel confident. This will translate into them feeling worthy and valued. And hopefully by the end, you will feel your own confidence and how to support them. So we know small, consistent actions are the building blocks for confidence, and we hope that you walk away with a couple things that you can do in your everyday life to help support your kids.
Okay, thanks, Ashley. And we also have a cheat sheet and I think prepared for you guys at the end of the presentation. Lindsay will be emailing that out. And we'll have a lot of the things that we're doing and offering from the presentation in a quick cheat sheet. So let's start with why self-esteem matters. Self-esteem influences how children move through the world, especially during challenges. We want kids to be able to rise to challenges and grow into thriving adults. When kids feel capable and valued, they begin to approach life with courage and flexibility. So when kids have a healthy self-esteem, we might see them be able to try new things. When they're confident, they can begin to explore their worlds, take small risks, and build inner strength. Kids with healthy self-esteem handle frustration and recover a lot more quickly when things get difficult. And kids with self-esteem or with healthy self-esteem have an easier time building friendships and making good social connections, which we see is really important for kids of all ages, but especially those preteens and teens. With kids with self-esteem, they can bounce back easier after mistakes, learn to trust themselves, and start to feel proud of themselves without that need for protection. So, what is self-esteem? Self-esteem is really the inner story that a child tells themselves. It shapes how they think, feel, and respond to the world. Children with high self-esteem understand they have worth, that their voice matters, and that they can handle challenges. Children and teens with high self-esteem feel they can be themselves, and this acceptance encourages authenticity. So every child can build strong self-esteem, but what matters the most is the relational environment that surrounds them. So it's having that opportunity as well for repeated interactions. It's not based on personality or temperament. All children and teens can grow self-esteem with the right conditions. Think of it as soil. How self-esteem grows? It doesn't appear all at once. It'll grow through specific experiences that help kids feel grounded, capable, and connected. So here are the main conditions needed for self-esteem growth. And if self-esteem is the soil, warmth from a caregiver or parent is the sun. This comes from being unconditionally loved. Emotional safety is what's going to help kids feel secure during big feelings. We can think of competence as, I don't know, as the fertilizer. And the inner feelings of I can do things is super important. Small successes will build confidence, persistence, and resilience. So in session, what I'll often tell parents is success begets success. So any small success matters and can build additional ones. And growth through challenge. Kids grow most when they overcome something hard and on repeat. So some parent strategies here, offering small, real responsibilities that are age appropriate, whether it's pet care, choosing clothes, setting the table, or something a bit more advanced for older kids. And having a script, something like this is hard, but you can do it. If the child's younger, offering them help as well. So, what are the core components of healthy self-esteem? It's self-kindness, which is having that inner voice of kindness, almost like a inner therapist or coach, that voice that says, I can do this during tough moments. It's having self-efficacy, which is a trust in their own abilities, and their ability to problem solve, make mistakes, and build those skills as well. Self-expression, knowing who they are and being authentically free to express is an important component. Self-boundaries, really important in friendships and having that ability to say no when things don't feel right, as well as self-awareness. This is understanding one's own feelings and needs. So this kind of speaks to emotional expression, emotional awareness as well. So parent strategies here, you can ask your child, what do you need right now? A break, a hug, or help? Or validate feelings that you might see in them. It looks like you're feeling sad or mad or frustrated, and that's okay.
So you might be wondering, how do confidence and self-esteem differ? They're two concepts that are related, but they are different. Confidence tends to be based on skills and it can be variable between tasks. It reflects how capable a child might feel in that specific situation. It comes from doing hard things successfully. So knowing that you can do the next task or do the little bit harder task. And then self-esteem, on the other hand, it's based in worth and based in knowing your value. So it serves the foundation for someone's identity and it goes deeper than just believing we're capable of something. Kids can feel really confident in certain tasks or certain activities, but they can still feel unsure about themselves. Or, they might have a confidence in themselves in one instance, but you might hear them still saying things that are maybe more negative or not linked to that self-esteem. So a strong self-esteem can make confidence more stable across situations. Um, some parent strategies for improving confidence or self-esteem, replace generic praise with statements like good job. So using words like, I really saw how hard you worked. And then reflect your child's strengths to them. Name their qualities, and name the positive things that you see rather than just achievements. That can help root that self-esteem. So some signs of healthy self-esteem or growing self-esteem, it will show up in small ways, and these are some clues that we can look for. If your child tries again after they're feeling frustrated, it shows that they're resilient. It shows that they're able to return to tasks that are difficult. Being able to talk about their feelings shows self-awareness around feelings, shows perspective taking, and then asking for help when they need it. That can also be a sign that their self-esteem is positively growing. It means that they can understand that it's okay to ask for help and that it's not a shameful thing. Accepting good enough. This will increase their flexibility. It reduces perfectionism, which are both things that can cause distress. And then if you notice your child making choices based on their interests rather than external pressures, that can show that they're developing their own identity as well. So kids that are able to share their opinions and express them respectfully tells us that they're confident and that they understand that their voice has value. So some parent strategies in this instance might be pointing out when you notice these things. I really, really liked the way you advocated for yourself, or I noticed you tried again even when it got really hard. You can also ask your child questions about their thought process. Something like, what about that was hard for you? Or was there anything that really surprised you in that situation? Even something like, what helped keep you going when it got tough? These questions are what we would call process oriented, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But this really helps build awareness of their own tools and their own toolboxes. There might be some signs that your child needs a little bit more support. So they can have dips in their self-esteem, and that might look like behaviors or behavioral changes. But some clues that we'll see are that negative self-talk. It can really signal shame, it can signal feeling insecure. Having a fear of mistakes or avoiding activities, that might tell us there's fear of judgment. They think they're going to fail. They don't feel like they're capable of doing something. Looking for that constant reassurance, that might suggest that your child's feeling overwhelmed or that things feel unpredictable and that to them feels unsafe. Um, People-pleasing tendencies or perfectionism, comparison might even signal a fear of disappointing others or that their self-worth feels unstable. So some things that you can do if you're noticing these is inviting tiny steps toward fear activities instead of forcing big leaps. And what we mean by that is encouraging the next smallest step towards something that feels really big rather than pushing them to do that big activity right away. And if you're noticing signs of these, you could consider reaching out for extra support, talking to their teacher, having the teacher or classroom staff be aware, reaching out to their doctor, or even finding support within a therapist or a psychologist could be really helpful for your child.
Okay, so let's talk about how parents and caregivers can shape self-esteem. So it is a bit tricky, it's a bit vague, because there isn't like this, I don't know, tool or tangible object that necessarily helps, right? What it is it's shaped through hundreds of little interactions and opportunities to exercise this problem solving ability every week. So the way we speak, respond, or even repair relationships or guide emotions will become the blueprint for a child's inner voice. So we can support this through the language we use. We can model this in ourselves. Healthy self-talk to ourselves in front of our children helps. Staying steady as a parent during big emotions can be really helpful. And we're getting into the world of co-regulation here. Kids borrow our calm. So when there are bad moments, the calmer we can stay, the calmer they'll stay. Patience with mistakes is really important. We actually want our kids to make mistakes, even if it's annoying. Um, Sometimes, actually, even in session, I'll put kids on the mistake plan. Kids love being on plans. So you can kind of keep that in mind. But if they're really struggling with making mistakes, it can be important that they get comfortable with it. Letting kids try is really important. Allowing independent skills builds capacity in their own trust in themselves. So kids don't need perfect parents by any means. They just need present, steady ones. And your responses can become the foundation your child stands on and lend credence to their inner voice. Okay, so emotional safety always comes first. Kids start to believe in themselves when they feel seen and heard, supported, understood, or safe. So again, what we were talking about, this co-regulation world. So emotional safety, back to the soil, is the soil for confidence and growth. So during hard moments, we can start with, I see this as difficult, I get it. Or even naming the emotion we see. This is a quick one, name it to tame it. So I see you're feeling upset. How can I help? And then making time for those regular one-on-one check-ins where your only job is to listen can be helpful. And that can look like a once a week check-in where you just ask how things are going, what's going well and what isn't. Okay, so some self-esteem and confidence challenges or roadblocks. So we're going to touch on next. So some challenges that kids do see today at an increased rate, I would say even more than a decade ago, is a pressure to achieve higher expectations. Kids are definitely evaluated earlier and more often than past generations. Less downtime. Overscheduled days often leave little room for rest, play, or self-discovery. I mean, being bored is actually okay. It's not a problem. More visibility. Kids constantly feel watched through school activities and online spaces. So they're often feeling judged, evaluated, and comparison culture. A child's self-worth is easily influenced by peers, and they do compare themselves and probably have since time began. But now with social media, there is a difference there, which we'll get into. So, parent strategies here to remind your child that their worth is not tied to performance or grades, even though they can still do well, and to build in small rituals of joy or connection. So, that might be Friday night movies or game nights, and that have nothing to do with achievement.
Comparison's a really normal part of life. We are social creatures, but comparison can become overwhelming, and that can especially be prevalent today with the constant access we have to other people. So kids might compare things like bodies. They feel pressure to look a certain way. They notice when people's bodies change. They might compare grades and achievements. They're probably asking their peers what they got on tests. They're probably asking them how they did in their dance competitions. And then friendship and popularity, that can be compared, likes, follows, attention, social belonging, that all contributes to markers of identity. So some things that you would might want to work on as a parent strategy is talking openly about differences between people. Focus on everyone's individual strengths and their individual journeys or paths in life. Avoid comparing friends or siblings. Kids are already comparing themselves. They don't really need to hear it from their parents. They really know when they are different from others. So help break down those barriers and build each child up individually. You can ask questions like, what do you enjoy in this situation? Or what did you take away from this to shift that focus towards themselves? Social media. This is a little bit of a beast. We could probably spend all day talking about the impact of social media and the internet, but we'll try and sum it up just how it might impact self-esteem. So kids today are exposed to social media long before their brain even has the capacity to process what they're seeing, what they're watching. These online spaces tend to amplify perfection or perfected and filtered images. There's a comparison to unrealistic standards that can be a hit to self-esteem. Popularity metrics, obviously, like I said, follows, likes, views, shares, all of that can become a scoreboard for self-worth. Public mistakes and having images be seen by a lot more people nowadays. This makes kids and teenagers hesitant to try new things or hesitant to look a little bit silly. Um, and then even constant access to their peers or other people can be really, really overwhelming. They never really get that chance, like they have the ability to disconnect or get a true break. They're kind of always thinking about that group chat in the background or what's going on online. So some strategies that you can implement around this are co-viewing content. Ask your kids, do you think this is real or do you think this is edited? Setting boundaries around technology, and model good boundaries yourself. We can't really ask our kids to stay off social media if we're on the couch scrolling Instagram for hours or if we're comparing ourselves to people online. So create a positive family culture towards screen time technology and social media. And this is where we kind of talk about setting those boundaries ahead of time. So not setting them in anger or frustration as a consequence or a punishment, but rather talking about it as a family. Set family rules for tech time. Set family rules for, engaging in social media, and make sure everybody understands the why. Again, this would have to be something that's developmentally appropriate and would really depend on each child. But it's important to consider how social media and, cell phones and iPads are going to be treated in your family. Stay away from language like, oh, you're just saying this because of your phone or because you saw it online, and dive into their world. Like, how is this impacting you? How is your phone impacting you or your constant connection to people? And then encourage activities offline. Help your kid feel grounded in reality. Make sure they're taking breaks and encourage your kids and their friends to connect in real time together rather than, sitting in their bedrooms and scrolling TikTok together. Creating some rules and some space around that can be really, really helpful.
For sure. This
Go
one
for it.
is, oh no, that's a good where I like the board plan. And we
Yeah.
can brainstorm. Thank you. The board plan ahead of time.
Yeah.
What kind of things can we do when we're bored? When kids get bored, they get pretty frustrated,
Yep.
start whining, start annoying their parents. But if we have a plan ahead of play, like in time ahead of place, then it can create, yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
being consistent with that too,
Hmm.
right? Making sure that if you say there's no TV after 8 o'clock, there
Hmm.
is no TV after 8 o'clock, or there's no cell phones in the bedroom, there actually is no cell phones in the bedroom.
Okay, so identity pressure, this also impacts self-esteem. Kids and teens, more than ever, feel a pressure to define themselves, to know what they're going to be, to know what they're going to do. And it can really overshadow the ability to explore and dive into authentic growth. So the body image influences confidence at very young ages, and social media, as we were just talking about, and image culture influence this as well. Kids feel a pressure to achieve academic success. This performance can feel tied to worth and being confident. Kids often feel a pressure to appear self-assured and confident at all times, which then kind of creates this need to hide parts of themselves just to avoid that judgment or criticism. So, what we want to do here is normalize uncertainty. It's okay to not know who you are yet. Kids and teens, they're going through a phase of identity development, and we want them to feel free to try on different hats. We want to emphasize values, what kind of things matter to you, and have that be a guiding post over labels, and accept shifts in style, interests, or identity exploration without shaming. So if they're kind of punk rock one day and rap the next, that can be okay. So perfectionism and fear of failure can definitely negatively impact self-esteem. I see that at Creative Sky all the time. I work with a lot of kids who do struggle with perfectionism. It's often mistaken for motivation because kids end up doing really well, but at the core, it's rooted in fear, fear of mistakes, fear of judgment, and fear of disappointing others. So kids with this innate feeling of being perfect believe like they have to get it right. Their value will become dependent on flawless performance, and they end up living in a state of not good enough. Other kids might try avoiding that feeling, like if they can't do it properly, they won't try. So then that fear of failure leads to avoidance. So I'll just bring this back to that mistake plan. So this is where we really want to have children who live like this become comfortable with mistakes. So we can share our own mistakes, mistake stories where something was hard. Again, using good enough language or even excellence. Excellence is better than perfection. Let's aim for done, not perfect, and really praise risk taking here or mistake making. I'm proud you tried, even though it felt really scary. Okay, so emotional flooding will impact self-worth. And we want kids to be able to move through emotions, absolutely. But when they get flooded or stressed, they might experience fight or flight reactions, overwhelm, negative self-beliefs, or rigid thinking, all good or all bad. And what happens there is they're unable to navigate stress, and it's hard to build self-esteem with that type of mindset. So, parent strategies here or to co-regulate with your child, perhaps taking 3 slow breaths together. Actually, might get Ashely to weigh in here. We talked about this. This is something we also want to practice ahead of time, rather in these moments of dysregulation. Reduce demands temporarily. Well, a child's flooded. It doesn't mean that they won't be able to problem solve later, just not in this moment. And then revisiting those big topics later when everyone is calmer and more regulated and being able to problem solve retroactively can be very helpful.
Cooler heads prevail. So neurodivergent kids might experience self-esteem and confidence a little bit differently. When we talk about neurodivergence, we're typically talking about kids that might be diagnosed with ADHD, autism, giftedness, amongst other things. But even those who are highly sensitive might have experiences that are similar to those who are, classically neurodivergent. Um, so, neurodivergent kids experience environments that are more difficult for them, which can impact their self-esteem. They hear a lot more corrections. They're constantly being told, no, stop, don't do this. And their intentions are often misunderstood. You might have heard the term masking. A lot of kids that are neurodivergent tend to mask their true self. They're really trying to fit in. They're trying to do, the right thing. They're trying to look normal at school. And that can be really, really hard. It can be hard to be on all day. That just increases the likelihood that their self-esteem can be negatively impacted. These kiddos also experience more rejection sensitivity, which means that other people's facial expressions, other people's tone of voice, mannerisms, other interactions that they've had with people throughout the day, they might impact them on a deeper level than other people. So self-esteem grows when children are really allowed to just be who they are rather than who we expect them to be. So some language that you can use with your kids is framing differences as brain styles. We would call this like externalization. Use lots of language like your body looks so busy or your brain is making it so hard to focus instead of language like, well, why can't you just sit still? Or why can't you just do this? So we use a lot of that externalization language in session with kids. You know, your body is doing this or your brain is doing that. Um, or even using words like, oh, your brain has these superpowers to lean into their strengths. If you know that they're really good at some things, you might have to plan a little bit more in advance for sensory needs. Maybe they do need noise canceling headphones. Maybe they need movement breaks or quiet spaces. But having these things at their disposal will help them to build that self-esteem and help them to build their confidence to advocate for themselves in those situations. All right, some scripts. So some scripts that we use a lot of the time, or a lot ones that we recommend to parents a lot of the time, is just encouragement. This helps internalize capability. The generic praise that we give kids, like "good job" or "well done," that tends to teach kids to rely on external approval. Whereas if we can be more strengths-based, quality-based, and process-based rather than outcome-based, you'll help internalize that they really did it or that they're really capable of doing something. So this is what I mean when I say use process-oriented language. You stuck with that. You figured it out your own way. Look at how much you learned. Or even process-oriented questions like, what was hard about that? Did something surprise you about that? Rather than focusing on outcome-based things. Encourage everyday accomplishments. Don't just encourage big achievements, right? Aim to give your kids 4 or 5, specific types of praise in a day that have to do with things that they did really well that are, pretty basic or maybe even easy that they should be able to do. But they start to think, oh, my parents really noticed that, and that's really cool. So be really specific and be genuine. They notice when our platitudes are generic or disingenuous. Pair the words with warmth, get down on their level, share it with eye contact. Don't just yell it across the room. But these scripts will really become your child's inner voice. So replace using things like "you're so smart" with "you worked hard." Or, like I said, those process-oriented questions. What helped keep you going in that moment? That highlights that resilience and that ability to do hard things. So use encourage in everyday moments. Getting dressed seems like something that's obviously should be done and it's so easy, but sometimes our kids just need that little boost in the morning to be like, oh yeah, I did get out of bed and do it. And that was awesome. This has some more examples of confidence-based scripts. They'll really remember them. Pick one phrase, use it so often with your kids that they'll be able to finish it for you. It becomes rote for them, and that's important. Like I said, pair it with warmth, and then use these scripts, especially after mistakes. That will help your kids to start to understand their own resilience and their own ability to do it, and it'll help them to try again when things get tough.
Yeah, okay, the tiny tries method. This is important for both kids and parents to remember because confidence grows in small steps, not in big leaps. So tiny tries helps us frame that kids can approach challenges without feeling overwhelmed. So one small task, breaking challenges right down to the basics makes it feel manageable and achievable. And what we want to do is start with where a child's at. So you can just think of this as like a ladder. We want to meet them exactly where they're at. If they're not able to, I don't know, tie their shoes, that's where we're starting. One new attempt. Taking one single step forward reduces fear of failure. So we're really looking for these small successes. Again, one micro challenge, small challenges help kids experience big wins. So we're wanting to create this environment where they can succeed and can build self-esteem and giving them opportunities to try again, even if they did make a mistake. Then we say, oh, that's, I made a mistake. Good job for trying. So parent strategies here is breaking those big fears, like speaking in class or a presentation, into tiny steps, raising a hand, answering a short question. And you might need to engage their teacher in this, but If we go too big, what happens is their brains get flooded. So if they have to do a presentation, but before they can raise their hand, if that's what's hard for them, it could be too much. We want to celebrate the attempt, even if it feels small. Wow, that was a brave challenge try. A lot of kids really kind of glub onto being brave. So sometimes we'll create brave books or brave challenges, and letting a child decide what their next tiny try will be is important. Then they're involved in the process and they really love becoming little problem solvers. They get excited to tell us and tell their parents. Okay, so this is just some more parent tools here. So letting kids start tasks independently, celebrating effort, reducing that pressure heavy instruction, and breaking it down into steps. So what we can do is use visual steps. So this can be like drawings or check boxes, and this helps tasks start to feel manageable. Sometimes I'll have parents buy a little whiteboard and draw three little squares of what's coming next. Resisting the urge to do it for them when they're learning. It can be a little painful to watch, but you can stay nearby and coach and just offer help if they need it. And then debriefing after Ashley's spoken to this, the process. So, what was hard about that for you? Which step was easiest? Way to go. You've got this. It's like Nike, just do it. Okay, so the self-worth cup or the worth jar, which I believe I put in your handout, it's just a simple metaphor that allows kids and parents to understand how interactions are going to affect their self-esteem. So we're getting them to think about and notice what fills them up and what drains them. So there's an exercise we provided that lets them kind of decide, but what we know is that kind words, allowed mistakes, autonomy, that's some age appropriate choices, warmth and kindness, and strength reflection, which is just noticing what they're really good at, is going to fill their worth cup. Worth cups, fairly evident, get emptied with criticism, shame, comparison, and over control.
So, working on building your kids' identity through their strengths, children, they learn who they are when their strengths are actually reflected back to them, like Shannon was just saying. These reflections shape a stable, positive identity. So, you're a thoughtful problem solver, or you're really observant. Things like you're really gentle. I like the way you were so kind with your brother. It's so cool that you're so curious. These types of messages will become their inner voice. When kids hear these consistent, clear messages about themselves, they see themselves super clearly. So consider having these messages be positive and encouraging. And when we focus on the negative, that's when our kids tend to develop that negative sense of self. Some strategies again, noticing these strengths during those everyday moments, not just when it's special, asking targeted questions to build self-recognition. If you want to be really open and blatant about it, keep a family strengths list. What's everybody in your family good at? How do they contribute to the family by using those strengths? Add to it as your children change and grow. And then lean into your kids' strengths and interests. So, if they're really good at Lego and they're working on those 50-piece Lego sets, buy them the 150-piece set. It's expensive, but it works. Same with puzzles. Like if they're working on those, 100-piece puzzles, buy them the 200-piece, and really, really lean into the things that interest them in order to help build that resiliency by giving them maybe tougher tasks over time. Another important aspect to building confidence and self-esteem is emotional literacy. So, this is being able to understand your own inner world, and being able to understand your inner world will translate to feeling in control in the real world. Being able to name your feelings, having the emotional vocabulary to express your inner self, that's really important to emotional literacy. Understanding your body cues. And what I mean by that is recognizing that the butterflies in your tummy might be an expression of worry, or that your heart racing might be an expression of fear, or maybe it's excitement. Being able to express your emotions safely and have the coping skills to manage them is really, really powerful. So remember, we're not ever going to get rid of the emotion for kids, but we are going to help them manage it and feel more confident in being able to move through those emotions. It's also really important for kids to be able to recognize that their emotions aren't necessarily who they are. They're just something that they experience. And being able to separate those feelings from their identity will help with their self-esteem in a positive way. So, some parent strategies here: check in often with your kids, ask them how their body feels, notice their body, pair their feelings with their body clues, like your shoulders look tight. Are you feeling worried? Or your face is all scrunched up. Are you confused? Reminding them that feeling angry or sad or scared, it doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that they're humans. And like we like to say, like feelings are just information. They're just clues to tell us what's going on. We don't have to be bound by them. Kids learn best when they're regulated, when their brain and their body are settled. They can utilize them to the best of their ability, which in turn promotes that positive self-esteem. So the calm, think, try method, just three simple steps to calming yourself before you attempt a big task. First, you have to ensure your child has a calm body. Take some deep breaths, give them a quiet space. If you notice they're not calm enough yet, encourage them to calm, saying, I don't think our body is calm enough to solve this problem. Or taking deep breaths yourself. Like we said, co-regulation. Let them borrow your calm. Encourage them to think about the tasks. Like Shannon said, break it down into two, three, four steps. Maybe ask them questions that encourage understanding their perspective on the task and what might be hard about it. I like to use a lot of like I wonder language in these instances. So I just say out loud, like, I wonder what might happen if I ask my friend if they want to play basketball with me. Or I wonder what might happen if, you tried to tie your shoes today. And rather than framing it as a question that needs answering, you probably already know, but you just wonder it out loud and see if your child takes the bait. If they don't verbally respond, they're probably also thinking what the outcome might be. And then the last step would be to actually try the step. So encourage one small step towards the action you're trying to accomplish. And then these three things, they'll foster independence and they'll foster that feeling of capability in our kids. The more times our kids experience success or even mistakes that they feel in control of, the more capable they'll be.
So one thing here, I'll just get you to stare for 1 sec because I
Yep.
had the breathing ball, but I'll just reiterate this one. We really want to be practicing these calming exercises like breathing, stretching, whatever it is, when our child's calm. When they're upset and dysregulation, they'll go back here in their brain and they're likely to reject it. Okay, so collaborative parenting will build confidence. Ashely really spoke to this well. It's instead of telling what we're thinking, it's saying, let's figure this out together. It's bringing we language into this and how can we make tomorrow morning go better? A lot of curious questions are helpful here. Offering a child a role in solving the problem. What job do you want in our plan? And reflecting on outcomes together afterwards. What worked well? What didn't? How did you feel about this? What could we change next time? So when kids feel included in solutions, their confidence does grow, and they learn that mistakes can lead to connection instead of fear. A lot of kids experience fear over making mistakes, so that's why they try to avoid them. Okay, so we wanted to touch on ages and stages. Clearly, what works for someone in kindergarten might not in grade 10. So, preschoolers, how they build self-esteem is really through a lot of predictability, repetition of tasks, play, very important, being helpful, and adult co-regulation. A preschooler won't need to do a whole lot of independent thought, but being a helper can really add to their self-esteem. Keeping routines simple and consistent reduces overwhelm, and giving extra time just so they can try tasks themselves before stepping in. But yeah, they are natural helpers. Okay, so tools for preschoolers, play. Research will show that play builds skills 20 times faster. So, what we can do is introduce sensory play, imaginative play, constructive play. This helps build their problem-solving skills, their social skills, and resiliency. Actually, probably everything, hey?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely helps them to navigate the emotional world as well. Another way preschoolers develop confidence as I was saying, is by being helpful. So we can make a little list of small chores. It might be better for them to have it drawn and then you can check them off. And adult co-regulation. This is really what they need is borrowing the calm from the adult in their life to manage big feelings. So preschoolers are going to thrive when adults slow down and join their world. Their confidence will grow through connection and consistent guidance. Another thing too is the choices builds gentle choices that are age appropriate, like do you want the blue cup or red cup or choice of pajamas that night builds autonomy. Do you have anything?
I think play is really important. Enter your child's world. That's really where we're going to speak to kids.
Perfect.
So school-aged kids, what we would consider kids between the ages 6 and 12, they tend to learn through skill building, through being given independence, and then through social connection. These kids also probably will learn a little bit through play, but this is where you're going to see those like peer relationships be really, really important. Relationships to adults being really important, learning new skills, trying new things. So these kids really want to feel capable and connected. They thrive when they feel competent, independent, skilled. And some things that you can try is letting your child be the expert at something. Maybe there's something they know a lot about or they're really interested in. Thinking of, those kids that are really interested in planes. Maybe ask them to teach you something about them. Or those kids that really love art, maybe ask them to show you their art supplies. And just kind of let them teach you. Ask questions, even if you know the answer to the question. Kids love to share. So express genuine interest in what kids are saying. Tell them, "Oh, I didn't know that," or "I learned something from you today." You can even just reflect their words back to them to help them recognize like you were really listening and paying attention. Um, you can celebrate process, progress, and growth. Don't just celebrate grades or outcomes or trophies or achievements. And then some helpful strategies might be using a whiteboard or a visual to give step-by-step instructions. This might actually show on the next slide. Um, Use a whiteboard or visuals to give step-by-step instructions so that you're not constantly like nagging them or correcting them or telling them how it has to be done, but rather you can point them back to, oh, go check the whiteboard, or is that checked off the checklist? You can even role play tricky situations. Sometimes this can be helpful with those older adolescents, being able to navigate, how would you ask for help? Or your friend is asking you to do something you don't want to do. How are you going to say no? Um, and then end the day with a quick reflection. Maybe ask them, what's one thing you did today that you're really proud of? One of the things that I often recommend to parents is I call it a brag book. You get a little notebook, and then using that little notebook, maybe you take 3 minutes before bed to sit down and write a little note in there about something that you noticed they did really well that day or something you're really proud of them for. And then they can have that notebook to look back on and think like, oh, man, my parents, they told me I'm so good at all these things. So that can be a really helpful strategy as well.
Well, I like that. I'm going to get a brag book. Okay, so how do teens build self-esteem? It's a little different than kids. They're going to be building self-esteem through experiences that really support their independence, identity, and sense of belonging. They need room to grow into adults and they need adults to support the process. So teens are truly in this phase of identity exploration. They're learning who they are by trying on different versions of themselves. Peer belonging is really important at this age. Feeling included helps teens feel secure, and they're learning about themselves through others. Autonomy is an important part of self-esteem growth in teens, as their independence will build self-trust, but they're not quite there. So it is a tricky phase. Values discovery is really important. So exploring personal values together strengthens decision making. It really provides this umbrella or platform that helps teens decide what is important to them. So it can just feel like going through a list of 5, 10 values of things that really matter, right? Friends, community, education, etc. And feeling understood by supportive adults, validation and understanding increases that emotional safety. And this is where curious questions can really start to matter. We can validate their perspective as well, even if we don't agree. So that can just look like, I hear what you're saying. I wonder if. Okay, so here's some teen tools. Values mapping, even on the internet, where we can provide this in the booklet, um, is a guiding post, and having teens do a values exercise is beneficial. So it's, as I was saying, writing down what matters. Top five to start is actually great. Circle of control clarifies what teens can and can't control or what they can and can't influence. So just as a parent or caregiver, you can ask, what were you able to control in this situation? What weren't you? Collaborative decisions. This one's really important. Builds ownership and responsibility. So you can ask supportive or curious questions rather than telling. So that might look like, I wonder what would help you study rather than tell them it's time to study. Realistic boundaries, setting clear limits. Again, in moments where everybody's calm, support safety and trust. And we also want to really help teens notice when they're being harsh to themselves and maybe brainstorm kinder alternatives. So something along those lines might be like, oh, what would you say to a friend? I notice you're being a self-bully or mean to yourself. What
Yeah.
would you say to a friend in this situation? Okay, so some teen scripts that build self-esteem might be asking them what matters most to you here. A behavior you're maybe not on board with. This doesn't define who you are. Important for identity is that everyone learns who they are in their teens, and it's important for teens to know that. We see a lot of teens here who feel that they have to have their career choices figured out, their 10 years ahead mapped out, and that can be really stressful. And so letting them know that you're allowed to change your mind is also very important. As parents, we can use the reflective listening, repeating back what we're hearing before giving our thoughts. Tell me if I'm right when you said this. Keeping our responses shorter and calmer than their emotions. So, what I'll say to parents here is let's aim for 10 words or less and a calm, low, slow tone. That way, we're not getting into emotions, meeting emotions. And then after conflict, which is natural, normal, and happens, we can repair with, oh, sorry about that. I care about you. How can I help?
So really there's universal tools that are going to work for most people. These are things like your connection rituals, going for ice cream together, sitting down at bedtime, having dinner as a family, predictable routines, knowing what to expect in your day to day, using those encouragement scripts, that process-based language rather than outcome focused, reflecting kids' strengths to them, really pinpointing their qualities and the things that they're good at, flexible thinking tools, making sure we're not being too rigid, and then being able to name your emotions and co-regulation. These are things that are going to work for kids of all most age, probably even adults, honestly. So all of these things are going to create that environment where self-esteem can flourish. Some strategies here that you can implement in your day to day, one small ritual that anchors connection. So, what are you going to do? It doesn't have to be daily, maybe it's weekly, maybe it's monthly, but something that really anchors your connection with your child. And then keep your expectations clear and consistent, knowing, creating that culture where they know what to expect rather than having those consequences or punishments be seemingly unpredictable or, kind of disorganized. And then make sure your children know that their feelings are welcome. We can still set limits. It's really important to still set limits, but we're not going to get rid of the emotion. So let's accept it and help kids through the emotion rather than trying to talk them out of an emotion.
Yeah, so I'll just get you to stay here for one sec. So something we might use in session, and as parents, you can, this is with younger kids, is feeling flashcards. So what we want kids to be able to do is start to identify their own emotions, label them, and then have tools of moving through them. I know we're getting into the world of emotion regulation, but it is important for building self-esteem.
Mhm.
And through any age, being able to name our emotions and having a plan ahead of time of how to move through them quicker because they are natural and normal and they are clues.
Totally.
But yeah, we do want to have ways of moving through them. Otherwise, they can get stuck. And this actually goes into flexible thinking tools as well. We want to give kids flexible language so they don't get stuck in their emotions or anything really, right? So you can model that as parents by saying, I can be flexible. Okay, this is hard for me. Having stuck thoughts. I don't want to go to this restaurant, but you know what? I'll be flexible.
Yeah, using the word flexible is
Like,
very
I
helpful.
overuse the word
Yeah,
flexible.
I agree. So like we said, just try one small change, be encouraging, add one tiny try that kids can do, connect with your kids, and just remember to give yourself compassion and grace. You are a good parent and you are doing good work. So keep that up.
And with the tiny try, think of it as a ladder. You can even draw it, but we just want to build all of these skills to the top and not start at the top.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I believe that you've got this.
Yeah.
No, this is just yeah, self-esteem growing from, as we were saying, warmth, consistency, patience, really allowing those mistakes. Think of the mistake plan and seeing your child clearly.
Yeah, I think one thing that maybe we didn't touch on a ton is that having your own self-esteem and your own positive self-worth and modeling that to your kids is going to come across so big for them. So keep that up.
Oh, and your own, yeah, we didn't touch on parent self-care. Very important for this as well, right? Especially if kids are in that spot where they need to borrow your calm. Okay, so if anyone has questions, this is the time where we can take them, and I think they'll pop up on our screen. We're happy to share.